Hey guys, welcome back to Vince Customs, and today we're going to continue on with our series of taking a Black Canary Sideshow premium format and turning it into a Velma from Scooby-Doo. So in our past video we did a lot of chopping. We built out the legs, we worked out the arms, the neck, the head, and all that stuff. So if you want to see the beginning of the video and how we got there, at this point now I was able to sand down all the legs, the booty, got all this nice and cleaned up. So this is all ready to go. So the next step is I'm going to start working on the shoes and the socks. So the way this works is this is gray primer and this is a blue mechanical pencil. This is blue lead. This is typical blue lead that you use for comic books, stuff like that. I find that this doesn't really dig into the primer that much. It goes on very well, and you don't get any kind of dusting either. So you could kind of just sand this off with a little fine sandpaper, and you could kind of make your marks pretty well. I find that if you use, like pencil, like graphite, the graphite gets around the primer, it gets on your fingers, and you start to get messy. This stays pretty nice to where you go, and it goes on very small. The only problem I have though is I break it a lot. Like sometimes I'll sit here and boom, see I broke off the tip. That's not a big deal though. Just buy it in bulk and you get it fine. So what's going on now with this one is I'm working out pretty much where the shoes and everything is lining up on there. So I did a little bit of drawing. I'm going to utilize the shoes that came with Black Canary. I like the way they're kind of flat in the front. I think that fits her pretty well. So what I've been doing is I'm just kind of drawing around here, just kind of like where I'm going to start lining stuff up. This is kind of scratched up on this leg here. Up here it's nice and smooth. Everything's smooth here, but down here it doesn't matter, because what I need to do right now is I'm kind of like drawing where I want to go with the socks, because the socks are going right above, like right below the knees, which is exactly where we're going to put the socks. So the idea is on this is I'm going to build out the shoes a little bit thicker. I'm going to build out this strap a little bit thicker. And then what I'll do is I'll lay Aves into here, and I'll lay Aves all around here, and I'm going to use like a cloth, and I'm going to give it a texture. So I'm going to give these sort of a texture socks, but I'm going to make sure these shoes are nice and smooth. It's a little bit tricky to explain what's going on right now, but for right now I just kind of want to draw all this out and mark everything. Now, socks sort of have those lines, they sort of have those lines up top, and then they kind of, stop right there. So we're going to sort of create those lines too the best we can, and then hopefully when I start making that texture and everything, it'll start to come together. It's fairly straightforward, but I don't have to worry about any kind of mark or anything like that. So I'm going to just start lining up this stuff here and see how things start working out. Alright, so I rolled out some Aves, and I'm going to go in the garage, and I'm going to put some baby powder on some wax paper. I'm going to roll this out into a nice flat surface strip, and I'm going to cut out strips, and then I come back in here, and I could use some of my safety solvent and put the strip around the shoe like that, around there, and sort of blend it out and create this shoe area here. What that's going to do is that's going to help me so when I put the sock in it later, I have an area where it's kind of like a nice even spot where I can put the sock in and work it. If I try to put the sock in now, it's going to look weird kind of coming out there and not having a perfect line, because the sock will probably be uneven if I try and do that. So I'll do this shoe and I'll do this shoe, let it cure up for the day, go into the garage, sand it down, and I'll work out a thick strap. And then what I could do is afterwards I could put Aves, just like I roll down here, Aves here, and then Aves up here, and I can work out the texture on the shock. We'll kind of go over that when we get to it, but for right now, I want to build out the bottom of these shoes. Okay, so I did the straps on her shoes and sadly I lost the footage. Something happened. I thought I was recording and it wasn't recording. I'm not really sure why. It happened with another thing too as well. So I actually went out and I got another SD card just to think maybe that was the issue. And so far everything's working pretty well. So anyway, this is pretty much straightforward. What I did was I wrapped a piece of Aves around the shoe. As you can see, I kind of added a little line stuff here. And then what I did is I built out a little piece of a ring. It's a metal ring, and then what I did is I cut off a piece of metal rod and I stuck it in there so it looks like it's strapped around the edge. I went online and I looked up, like, you know, shoes with straps and stuff, so I kind of wanted to exaggerate it a little bit, make it a little bit larger, because I think it kind of fits the shoe a little bit better. So you can see how that worked out. Now this was thicker because, and this is thicker because what I do is I'm going to add a layer of Aves into here, and I'm going to add a layer of Aves around here, and we're going to create this sock. We'll go over that next, but what I want to do right now is I want to go in the garage today. I want to prime this up. I want to clean up all these shoes and everything, get everything nice and clean, and then we can focus on one sock, and then after that I can finish up the other one. So I got a little extra Aves right now, and I figured this would be a good starting point just to kind of do this test here, make sure everything's looking good, exactly what I want to do, and then after that I can come back to this another day and do the rest of it. So all I did was the rest of this Aves, I just rolled it out here with some baby powder, and all we have to do right now is move this aside, try to get a lot of baby powder off of there. I'm going to start with this here. So I have an old towel. This towel is fairly old, so I think older towels are a little bit better because they're not as soft. They probably won't pull off a lot of fabric, plus they get older and stiffer, so this little texture will kind of help out a little bit better. So take some of the safety solvent, soften up this part, get any of that baby powder off of there. And basically what we do is we kind of push this onto here, like so. Okay? Now, next step is grab our X-Acto blade, try to cut in as close as possible to where that opening of the shoe is. So if you have to sort of push the shoe down, Aves down a bit, make sure we got missed a cut here, so there we go. Trying not to cut the Aves that's there, but I'm trying to get the cured Aves. That's what I mean. I'm trying not to cut that out. Okay. Alright. So I'm going to keep going through this, and then once I get this cut out, we'll come back. Alright, so I got it cut out. We have a little bit of extra Aves, so there might be enough for that foot. We're not sure yet. So this is a fairly new paintbrush. So what I want to do is I want to go in this area and sort of squeeze this in there like it's kind of inside the shoe. Just gotta get it around. Now at any point I feel that it's kind of not in there, just grab a tool, sort of tuck it in a bit if I need to. I'm just going to go around and do that, and then we'll come back. Okay, so you see I went around there and I made it look like it's sort of, you know, it's kind of tucked in underneath the strap. That's kind of like the goal for that. And this might have to go through a couple passes, but it's a sock. It's not supposed to look super pretty, but so next we take our towel. Now you don't have to, you know, like smash this in here, but sort of start giving it a texture. Now I'm probably going to have to cut this towel up just to make life easier on certain areas. Now you don't want it too soft and tacky where it like sinks into the towel, because you know the towel starts to take some of this up. But we just create a texture. Now you might have to go through a couple different towels. You know, I might, you know, if I didn't like this towel I could go to something else, but I think if we just keep kidding this, we create a nice little sock texture inside the shoe, like so. So we got a nice little texture, and it's within everywhere we want it to be. Now what I might have to do is off camera just kind of maybe go in there. Well, I probably don't even have to. I think it's looking good as it is. But just to make sure, if at any point I'm thinking, okay, it needs to be kind of cleaned up a bit, I could kind of just come in here just a little bit, clean it up a bit. I don't have to use my magnifying glasses to kind of get in there and sort of go. But that is the idea on how to create the texture for the sock. Now this is going to be the same way we're going to do the sweater, pretty much. Because a lot of the stuff I looked out there, you know, kind of the socks and the sweater sort of look similar. But I think this will come along pretty well. So you just want to make sure you have a nice little, like it's tucked underneath there, the best we can. Okay, so that is pretty much how we're going to be doing the socks. Like I said, I don't know. I don't think I have enough to do the other one. I might have enough, so I could do that fast part of the video on that, and then we'll let this cure up for the day, and then what we'll do is we'll come back next time and we'll do the top part of the sock. So as long as you have your towel and you're not changing up your towel, or you have a little piece that you can throw away, or you know, whatever, you should be able to do these in sections every other day or whatever. So that's kind of like the goal. I'm just gonna try not to rush this out, because if I'm handling her and then I go to try to do this part and I mess that up, it just creates more of an issue. But I think that looks pretty good. It looks like there's gonna be a nice textured sock within the shoe. Next day, and I want to start this sock. I figure it's pretty much after lunchtime. I could do this sock now, and then maybe later tonight before I close up shop I can do this one and get them both done. I don't want to rush doing both of them at the same time, because I know with it being here, if I go to do this around here, I'll probably hit something and make my life miserable. So let's just do one at a time. So I rolled out Aves. It's fairly thin. I got to make sure that I get all this baby powder off, because when you wrap it around this part here, if it's got baby powder on it, or you don't put it on correctly, what happens is you'll create air bubbles. So it's a little bit trickier, this part. This is easier because it was just one little spot, but when you're wrapping it around, you also got to cut behind it and you got to even it out too. So it's a little bit tricky to kind of get this going. What I want to do though is I want to create a little bit of wrinkles back here, so it looks like the sock is kind of wrinkled up behind the heel, just for fun, a little bit something. And then I have this sculpting tool, and once I put that on there, before I do any of my texturing, what I want to do is I want to create lines. This is as far as line I want to go. Now I don't want to jam it in there and hit the you know, the polystone. I want to just kind of create lines, and I got to try to do it as even as I possibly can. I'm not going to go crazy and do like crazy little tiny lines. I'll just do a couple, you know, going around. And then when I do my texture, what'll happen is this will create that little, like, looks like it's a little stretchy part up here with those lines. And then over here is all this texture. So it kind of just brings a little bit more life to the sock. So let me get this all set up, and then we'll come back, we'll wrap it around and see if this works out. Okay, so we're pretty much all set up. It's a little bit kind of tricky, but it'll work. So I made sure this is nice and tacky. Now, one of the things though is if you put this on, you mess up and you pull it off, all this tackiness goes all over everything, and it gets a little messy. But we'll get it to work. So what we want to do is we're going to wrap it around from the front first. Try to line up this part, kind of start from this shin and kind of squeeze backwards best we can, not trying to squeeze super tight right away, trying to make sure there's no air bubbles. Now if it's not tacky, what happens is when we come around like this, it starts to flap around. So we're going to kind of go around there. I'm not really worried about this top part too much. That's not an issue. Okay, so let's start with our cuts. Make sure we got an X-Acto blade set up. Just kind of cut this coming up. We're not doing the seam behind her. We're going to kind of clean that up. Okay. Alright, and then what we do is we're going to put this piece over like this. Now, this part's a little bit lucky, it's a little bit thicker, so we could kind of stretch it a bit. Come around. Alright, so we're going to do the same thing here. Sort of kind of cut this. Get this cut out over here. We're going to cut it a little bit more. Okay. It's good to have it thickened there, but thinner in the back. Trying to make sure that we have no crazy air bubbles. There's an air bubble right here. It's just, it happens. Not sure why all the time, even though I try. Could be an air bubble too between the A's when I rolled it. That's also a possibility. Alright, so let's go down here. Start cutting this out. Just like we did in the front. Cut this out. Follow what we did. Trying to show you guys while cutting it, not hitting the camera. It's a little bit of a pain. Yep, dirties up the shoe a bit, but that's okay. We clean that up later. A little sandpaper down the line cleans it up, no problem. Okay. So you can see we got a nice thicker sock on her so far. Get our tools and start. Let's actually get the newer one. I like the idea that these are going to be fairly thick on her, because it seems like she always wears thicker ones. They're kind of like really heavy. One Almost think of those like 80 stockings, 70 type stuff almost. And I'm just kind of like tucking it in the areas. Okay. Alright, so we got that sort of set up. So we want to kind of cut this up here now. Make sure we have nothing messing us up. So that's kind of where our line is. So let's kind of follow this line around, and it's another problem with handling it too much. Sometimes you dig into it with a fingernail or tool. Try not to press too hard on areas. Now, if for some odd reason I felt this was way too thick, like really too thick, I would actually like squeeze it up, so I can actually kind of like squeeze it up more and push it up. But I think we got a nice good layer on her. I think this look good. So kind of rounding the top now, so it's not a perfectly straight. The other thing too is it's kind of, if it's not perfectly round like straight, I think that plays a little bit better to the sock being like sort of puffy and thick. So we kind of look around, make sure. So kind of push this up to this line a little bit more. This has to look sort of straight across. You don't want it warped, but you don't want it like so perfectly, you know, perfect line. And any parts that look really messed up, you can go from there. Alright. Alright, so what I'm going to do real quick off camera, because I have to get in closer with my glasses, I'm going to go in there and try to clean all this edging up to make it look like it's tucked in a little bit more. And then when we'll come back, we'll do the wrinkles there, we'll do the line work, and then we'll start texturing it. Alright, so I did a little bit of touching up with the magnifying glass, kind of see. So let's add some wrinkles to the back of her heel a bit. Nothing too crazy. Just make it look like it's bunched up. Once I add the texture to it, it'll kind of adds a little life, just kind of doing little line work, kind of just study some wrinkles, and you can kind of add some cool little lines going there, so it looks a little bit back there. Might have to exaggerate them a little bit, only because once I start adding the texture, it'll push them down a bit, so it's okay to do it a little thicker. Alright, now I'm going to clean this line up a bit best I can. Alright, make sure this part is where we want it to be. Just look around. Alright, so this is the tedious part. I want to do a few lines just to show you what I'm going for, but I'm going to have to probably do this off camera because it might take me a few tries. And I want to make sure I line up. So basically you just kind of throwing a line there, throwing a line there, there. I'm not pushing in too hard. There. So I'm just going around her like that, as you can see. So I am going to try to get these lines on the best I can. We will come back and we will try to texture it and see how this works out. Okay, so we got everything on, so let's start giving it a little texture. So I had to cut the carpet because it would have makes my life a lot easier. I'm not pressing too hard, but got to give it some kind of a trying not to press too much up top by the little lines we did, but sort of putting it together kind of creates that little bit of that stretchy stuff, so it's coming together. And we'll press some up top just to kind of break it up there a bit. Yeah, kind of getting there. Now, the little tricky part is back here. We don't want to kill our wrinkles, but we want to keep them. I did have to kind of fix the lines a little bit. I put the lines on and then they sort of didn't line up, so I had to kind of go back and fix it. Sometimes you just gotta This is kind of why it's easier to do one at a time. So the wrinkles back here sort of, so this is also sort of practice too for when I start doing the sweater, because the sweater is going to be a similar way, but the sweater is going to have a lot more wrinkles and all those puffiness, so that's going to be a little bit tricky on how to get that going. So make sure we got our tools and got to kind of go back in here and clean some of this up. That's why it was kind of good to do a little bit deeper cuts in those wrinkles. And there you go. We got pretty much a nice little decent sock. Let's turn off the lights. Maybe you can kind of see a little bit better there. So I'm going to try to detail this up a little bit with my magnifying glass just to make sure I don't miss anything. You can see, like I said, these little things are kind of wrinkled up here and they're not perfectly straight anymore, which is good. That's what we want. But it looks like a nice heavy sock on her now. And I think it's going to fit the character pretty well. So let me get that detailed up. I'll come back later tonight. I'll work on this other one. We'll get that set up and then hopefully we can just keep plugging away. So on to Velma's glasses. Now this is something that I had to do trial and error to see if these things were going to work or not. So the way this evolved over time was when I started working on this, I thought, okay, what I'm going to have to do is sort of build an armature and then I'll have to put Aves on it and sort of build out the glasses. It's going to look kind of off. It's going to take a lot of work and blah, 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 blah. You know, just kind of, it wasn't really coming up with the idea. And then when I talked to my friend Meta John, he said, you know, for the hand, go onto that website, download a STL file for glasses, you can print it out, and then you're pretty much done. So I said, alright, let's try it. So I picked a pair of glasses on the STL site, and he printed me out a couple different sizes, and these things are beautiful, and they are perfect. But the only downside is they're so thin. Now, if he or I was able to get into these STL files and thicken them up and maybe work them out better in like a 3D file, then maybe they would print out a little bit better. But the problem is they will go on a face perfect and they're in perfect scale. But the problem is it's so thin and so flimsy that I might actually snap and break them. So if I put this on the way it is, if I clean these up and I Dremel these out, the problem is they'll be so thin. If I'm like working on her hair, or if I'm kind of like, you know, pulling her in and out of the, you know, the body and stuff after it's painted, one wrong move and one thing, you crush these, they're gone, they're done. So this stuff is not as durable as I would like. So I did print me out 3 of them. So the smaller one that was way too small, what I did is I figured, okay, let me try and put this in a needle mold where you mix A and B mold together and you squish it in there, so then maybe I can make thicker glasses. That was a complete fail. They snapped and broke in my hands, and that just wasn't going to work. So this stuff is doable if you really want to sit there and make the perfect, you know, resin copy of these with the mold and take your time and all that stuff. But for me, I'm just, even if this was molded and casted in resin, they're still flimsy enough where they would break with the resin. So I really don't like the idea of these not being worked. Now I think if this was a bigger scale, like a bigger head, and these were thicker, it would work. But for something this scale, it's just not doable. So I told him, I said, you know, this is not going to work. These things are too flimsy, and then I have to buy mold, I have to buy resin, I gotta borrow my friend's pressure pot, I gotta make, you know, I have to see if I could design it where I put a metal rod in them. And I said, it's just way too much work. So after some more brainstorming, I remembered that his laser printer can pretty much laser like patterns. And then I remembered that I had an old Bayonetta kit that I sold off a long time ago. But I remember in that Bayonetta kit there was a metal sheet. It was very, very thin metal. And what it was laser etched glasses like these. And what it was is you can clip out the glasses and you can bend them and you put it onto Bayonetta's head as a thing without like frames in them. You know, I mean, without you know, glass in them. And it works out for your kit. And I told him, I said, what if I send you a sheet of metal? Can you laser that out? And he said, sadly, his laser really doesn't go through metal. So I was like, oh. But he's like, you know what? I have comic book dividers. You know, like in a box of comic book, those white dividers, he showed me them. And he says he etches those out all the time for stuff. I said, so he says, why don't you do a pattern in Illustrator and send it to me and I'll laser it. I said, all right, that might work. But I said, is that stuff like durable? Can you bend it? Like, you know, does it snap, whatever? And he says, you know what? I'll also laser you some plexiglass too. And I said, all right, let's try it. So as you can see over here, this was all the laser stuff. Basically, the best way to do it is just laser a bunch of patterns onto the sheets and send me as many as you can, because you never know how things are going to work. And when I got these in the mail, this is exactly what I was going for. All this testing over here was kind of failed until we got to where we're at here. So all the white stuff here is the comic book divider stuff. And then all these clear plastic pieces are the you know, plexiglass. Now, the problem is you get this stuff like this. He lasers it like that, and that's all he can really do. So on my end, what I did is, you can see all these over here, I did a whole testing. I have a heat gun. And what I did is I went in the garage with the heat gun and I sort of melted them and I would turn them. And the problem is some of these kind of like warped and they looked funky. Other ones kind of like, you could see they got all messed up over here. Some of these over here just kind of really warped the glasses and stuff. So the comic book divider, the white pieces, worked, but the problem is trying to bend them and warp them, they got way too soft. And the problem is if you don't have the proper setup, it doesn't work. So I said, all right, let me try the plexiglass ones. And the plexiglass ones are actually perfect. They're exactly what I wanted. The problem was I just had to find a special way of melting them without ruining the frame. So after a bunch of tries, as you can see, I got the perfect pair, which is nice and straight. They kind of go in at an angle and it goes over the head perfect. So as you can see, I have a nice pair of set glasses on her that is going to be absolutely perfect. They're nice and big. So what I need to do is I have to just sort of kind of mark here and mark over here and sort of like grind out the little piece here. So this way, as you can see, I bent them in at an angle. So this way they sort of lock into the head a little bit better. And then I can start sculpting the hair and I can actually keep making sure that at the end I can put a dab of glue on there and just glue this in and I'm done. I'll paint them black, of course, and everything, and it should work out pretty well. Now, I don't want the clear, like, you know, glasses in there. I don't want that. I want it just to be open like this so you can see the eyes. It's just a statue. I don't need to have it completely, you know, oh, it's got to have glass frames in there. I don't want all that. I want to be able to see the eyes and just make it look like, you know, a decent statue. So that's kind of the goal of the whole glasses thing. So it worked out really well. It was a lot of trial and error. But after, you know, getting in there with the heat gun and making sure I don't burn my fingers off, of course, I pretty much got it down on how to bend these frames and everything. So some of the frames are a little bit thinner, but this one right here, I like the idea of the thicker frame. It works out pretty well. Let me put on one of the better white pieces so you can kind of see like how it kind of looks. And I think that's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted, and this should work out pretty well. Now the white stuff's a little bit more durable because it's kind of more of a plastic, so it kind of has a little give to it. The plexiglass stuff is a little bit more fragile, and you can snap them. So I'll kind of give you an example of one of the ones that got messed up. Where's the one that was really funky? I think it was... This one kind of looked okay. Yeah, this one kind of was really messed up. So with a little bit of pressure, it doesn't break, but if you really give some pressure, it snaps, as you can see. So sadly, the plexiglass stuff can still break, but it's not as breakable as like this stuff would have been. So I got a nice set of glasses. I pretty much marked it with black marker here, so this way I know what's what. And all I need to do now is sort of just Dremel. You know, just going to make my marks right now. Let's do it right now so I give you guys an idea what I'm looking to do. So, I need to be careful with the glasses, of course. I can still drop them and stuff. I need to line it up exactly where I want them to be, which is kind of like right there. So, if the ears are kind of up there, so you figure I'm going to have to grind out a little notch there and grind out a little notch over here, like so. And that should kind of help me line up the glasses a little bit better. And then what'll happen is I'll grind out that spot there, grind out that spot there, and then when I start sculpting the hair, I can always make sure to take these glasses and sort of, you know, squeeze this in here, so this way when the hair's in there, it'll kind of create a piece so I can lock these in better. So I might have to kind of lower the notches a little bit. I'll have to make sure. But no, I think that should work pretty well. We want to make sure you get the CDI, so yeah. But that's kind of what I came up for the glasses, and I think this opens up a world of possibilities for me down the line now. So if I ever come across something like this down the line, I could contact Meta John. I could say, hey, we need another pair of glasses. You know, let's kind of like, you know, do some more etching, and that's kind of what we came up with. So I'm going to kind of get this set up. If anything goes wrong, we save the files, so I can always go back and have them etch more if I need it. But I think right now this one is perfect, and I just got to take very good care of this one. Other than that, we're pretty much ready to go. So let me notch out this stuff and start cleaning it up, and then hopefully we can start planning out the hair. So at this point, now that the socks are done, the shoes, the legs, everything's ready to go, I got to start working on the skirt and going up. But I can't really do that until I get the right arm done with the right hand. And like I said in the beginning, I'm not really good with sculpting hands and stuff, and I didn't have anything in my box of parts. So I was talking to my friend Meta John in Canada, who does all the 3D etching stuff on a lot of the stuff I do. And he has a 3D printer, and he mentioned there's a site where you can purchase STL files. And on this site is every kind of sculpt you can imagine so far, and it seems more and more going up every week. You know, there's hands, there's, you know, you could get a whole crazy computer chair that gamers use. You can print out like that for an item. Desks, tools, heads, hands, figures, models, everything. So it's a really great way to like actually start customizing a statue by adding elements into it. But there's a downside to it, because this stuff, even though this stuff is printed, it's hollow, and the problem is I don't know the long term on this stuff. Does this stuff like start to deteriorate over time? Will it react to certain paints? You know, I know it's resin, but the stuff, all these things are hollow. So for me, if I try to Dremel into this and I put Aves in there and I try to add it to the item and say I sand it, will it shatter? Will it crack? Will it break? You know, I don't really know. So I still need to make a mold and a resin copy for what I do. And honestly, I still think that a lot of this 3D printed stuff should be molded and casted in solid resin anyway, because I don't think this resin is quite there yet. It's still very early technology, but that's just my opinion. I know I see a lot of people that print this stuff out, they sand it down, they prime it, and they paint it, and it's good to go, but personally, I feel that I don't really know the long-term stuff. Like, what if this stuff breaks on you? What if it cracks over time? This stuff is hollow. And anytime hollow stuff this thin, in cold and heat can expand and contract, and that stuff could actually break on you. So if anything, you still need to fill this stuff. But what kind of material do you fill this stuff in? If you use that stuff at Home Depot for, you know, your walls, that stuff might explode it. Smooth On makes some stuff where it's a 2-part resin that actually bubbles and stuff. That stuff's really good, but will that explode this stuff? If you pack this in there with some kind of other material, will it like expand or contract? Will it blow up? So I don't like hollow stuff, and I don't know the long term of this stuff. So anyway, what he did is, we didn't have an exact scale either. So what he did is he printed out a whole bunch of different scales, and he sent them to me, and I picked out the one I wanted. So this right here is the hand that is going to be on our right hand, and it's pretty much in scale as close as possible. But as you can see, these fingers are a little bit longer than these. So what I'm going to do is sort of tweak out these fingers a little bit. I could kind of get away with doing a little bit of tweaking, and it should work. But the other thing too is, in the beginning I was like, I wanted a magnifying glass, and I was on eBay, and I was looking all over for magnifying glasses, small, and I didn't find anything. So these files were actually just free. I mean, on that site, STL Fight, they were free. So my friend printed up a bunch of them. But then when I got it in the mail, I realized, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to make a mold of this. And then I got to borrow my friend's casting gear. And then I need to do it in clear resin, because then I need to paint the edges. And I'm like, that just creates way more work for me. So I was doing some more research. I was looking around. And actually, my friend John, he said there's this one thing on Amazon, you could get these magnifying glasses and stuff, and it comes in a whole bag for like 10 bucks. And I just got it in the mail today, and it's actually perfect scale. I did order magnifying glass pendants that are actually real metal. They were like $3 off eBay. I haven't gotten those in yet, so we'll see. But I have a funny feeling I'll be utilizing this. So the idea is I could kind of like shave this down and put it in her hand, and she could be holding a magnifying glass, which is kind of cool. So that's kind of the downside with this stuff. I mean, it's really cool that it opens up a world of possibilities for me now. If I get a statue that's missing hands, or if I get a statue that's missing a head, and there's a really cool head on this site you could purchase, you have to print it out in scale and then make a resin copy of it. You know, say if I'm working on an item and I want to put it in front of a desk and print out a computer chair or a computer monitor, there's a world of possibilities. But like I said, this stuff is really not quite there for final. You still probably need to make molds, but we'll see what happens. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually plug up these 2 holes here, and I'm going to plug up some of these areas around here in this hand, because if I try to put mold in here, it'll seep in there, and when I try to pull the mold out, it'll probably crack or break and hit all that stuff. So you can't really have gaps when you make your molds. That's just the downside of this stuff. Like in between these fingers here, I'll have to fill in, but this finger here I could get away with. For the mold, we'll see. And it doesn't matter if I fill this in, because I could always go back in later with the resin copy and tweak it. Plus, I have to actually get this in here anyway. I'm not trying to get it where it's down here. I'm going to try to get it where it's kind of like in her hand like that. She's kind of holding it that way. But for right now, I'm going to mix up some Abe's Fix-It Sculpt. I'm going to tweak out these fingers a little bit to make them a little bit bigger, maybe the knuckles a little bigger. Try to make this a little bit more even fingers and hands. And I think that should work out pretty well. And then once I get my mold from my friend, we'll come back. I'll make a resin copy of this out of the mold and everything. And then we can start getting this arm all situated. And then we can start working on the skirt. As far as her eyeglasses, there's another thing we have to go over when I'm ready to work on the eyeglasses. But I'm waiting for some more stuff to come in. And then we'll do the eyeglasses on her head. There were some things we tried to do in the beginning that didn't quite work. But I think we got it down. We'll just see what happens when I get that stuff in. Because I'm a little bit worried about, you know, if your head's removable and you crush the glasses, you're screwed. But for right now, let me tweak out this hand a little bit off camera, because I have to get in closer with my magnifying glass, make sure I can kind of even this out. Like I said, I'll fill this in, and then we'll come back when I'm ready to make this mold. So what I did was I thickened up the hand a little bit. You can see around the areas. Plus, you know, the glove was there, so when taking off the glove, you have to sort of build up some stuff. So what I did is I tried to build up these fingers as like close as possible to these, and it looks pretty good. This back part here is going to have to get primed and sort of like some putty work and sanded, but other than that, we're looking pretty good. So I thickened up some areas here and there, and it's looking good. So as you can see on this hand, what I did is I filled up the holes, and I filled up some areas in there, because when I make my mold, all that mold would have seeped in there, and I never would have gotten any of that out. But so far, we are looking good. So I'll let this kind of cure up for the night, and then what I could do is I could do some stuff off camera with getting this tweaked out a little bit, And then once I get this mold, we can start working on this. So as you can see, we got the mold all finished up. Now I didn't film making the mold and stuff because my friend stopped by. I had to use up his stuff and he had to take it back with him. So I couldn't sit here and actually, you know, film it and everything. But it's pretty straightforward. I've done a couple videos on it. So all I did was Dremel a hole through here. I put a rod onto this little cup. And I mix up some mold and I poured it in. Now you might see some blocks sticking out. That's because I have a lot of little pieces like this. The idea was I didn't want to really use a crazy amount of mold on him. I just wanted to use a little bit. So I mixed up about that much mold in this cup. And I threw a bunch of pieces in there to fill it up higher. So it's just basically you can keep reusing this stuff over and over. So what I need to do is take this apart now. So I'm going to try to pop this out. And basically just have to kind of cut the mold out, get the hand, and see how it works without slicing a finger or anything like that. It's pretty straightforward. It's better to have it, you know, something like this. It's simple, kind of just hanging down into a little tiny cup instead of sitting there trying to make a two-part mold or anything like that. Now, usually, if you're lucky, kind of cut the cup. You can kind of just turn this down, see? There is basically a little mold. Now, if we're lucky, pop that out. So let's go back to the X-Acto blade. Now, like I said, I'm not doing this completely perfect. Like, you know, if I was going to do like, you know, like 10 different copies and you wanted to make it look nice, we're just making one pretty much, you know, piece. So all I really need to do now is sort of stretch it at an area. That's kind of cool. Suction cups at the bottom. So we'll kind of slice it here. Kind of like to stretch it so I kind of know where I'm slicing. And going at like an angle type thing a little bit so you kind of give it a little bit of a jagged look. And then we can pop that out pretty easy. Well, it should work. I don't want to cut the other side. I just want one like slice. There we go. So that's out. And looks like we got a nice, pretty much mold. So all I really do now is put some baby powder in there. I'll put a rubber band around this, or a piece of tape. I might not even have to really do anything, actually. And then just pour some resin in there and make a nice resin copy. And then this is my backup in case I ever need to do it again. And this stuff gets thrown out. So I'm going to go and do this, get this set up, make a copy, and then hopefully we can start working on the arm once the hand's cured up. So a little tip for you guys, back when I was really getting into molding and casting, I went to the Smooth On facility in PA because I was having some issues and I thought it was the resin, but they kind of, you know, were nice enough to kind of explain what I was doing wrong. And one of the tips that they gave me is if you're going to mold and cast, and it's not like a huge mold and cast, if you have like an oven or a space heater or something, warm up your resin and warm up your mold. That helps the chemical reaction and stuff a little bit better. And I find that by doing this on smaller items, things cure a little bit better than trying to do it without it being warmed up. So even in the summertime, even if I'm in the studio and I got to do something, I'll kick on the heater and I'll still warm up the resin and the mold. Now, this is the first time I'm going to make a casting of the hand out of this mold. I've seen in the past that the first casting you make, sometimes there might be a little bit of oil still in the mold, and it kind of mixes with the, you know, the resin. Sometimes it gets a little funky, and sometimes it actually works perfect. So I might have to mix a second hand just to be on the safe side. But other than that, it's just mixing A and B together, warming it up, getting everything nice and cured up, and then popping it out, and then I can start working with it. So I'm probably going to do one of these. If I feel I need to do another, I'll have another done, and then we could come back, look at them. I'll kind of show you what's going on with the hand that we popped out because it's sort of cracked a little bit like glass. I'll explain that, and then go from there. So I casted up a few, and I wanted to do an experiment. On my last casting, when I poured in the resin, what I did is I kind of made sure this stuff was fairly soft before it got like tough. And I popped out the hand, and what I did is I sliced it up. So as you can see, the original one, I closed the fingers and stuff. So what I did is I sliced it up, and I had one of these pieces sort of, you know, grinded down just for now. And what I did is I sort of spread out the thumb a bit, and I spread out this finger, and I can go back in there and rework it. and I drilled out to the bottom, so it looks like, you know, you're holding it a little bit better than trying to do it. So that worked out a little bit better. So if you're used to molding and casting with resin and you know you can pop it out where it's fairly soft, you can mess with it. Now, the thing is, these areas were soft too, so if you're not careful, you can crush these fingers and you can crush this stuff. But if you're, you know, if you pay attention to what you're doing, you can kind of keep it, you know, fairly well and work it. So what I'll need to do is, it's a good thing I have a bag of these now, so I got to go in there and I got to actually sand one of these down and probably cut it a bit and really make it a little bit nicer, because this I just went in the garage real quick and I just grinded it down, and when you try to grind down plastic like this, it just melts. But if I get a really nice one, what we could do is we could put it in there like that and it'll hold pretty well. So now I got a good hand that'll work. I'm just gonna have to go in here with a little bit of Aves, you know, kind of fix up these fingers, you know, clean up this hole over here because I drumbled through by accident, clean up this area here, and then we could start working on it. And if for some odd reason I messed this up, I could always do another one, you know, just pour in some resin and then pop it out when it's fairly soft and cut it again. But I think this hand should work out pretty well. We got enough meat over here where I could grind this out and put a rod to attach it to the arm. So we're looking really good. So we got a nice good hand holding up the magnifying glass. So next step is we'll get her set up and we'll start working out the arm with this. We'll get that prepped out, and I think that's where we'll end out this video. Alright, so time to work on this arm. And the way this is going to work out to make my life easy is I'm going to chisel out this wrist a little bit more. I only put tape right here right now after I chisel this hand down because I need to just see how it's positioned. So the way it's going to work is I'm going to chisel this down a little bit, and it's going to be like a wrist, but what's going to happen is this here and this here is going to be chopped away, and you're going to see a brass rod in the middle so I can actually bend it to where I need it. The way that works is you chisel this out, you put Magiscope in here, you put Magiscope over there, you put a rod in there, let it set up for the night, and then by the next day you can actually bend the wrist a little bit and kind of position it. You can't go crazy and bend it, it'll pop back out, but if you kind of just give you a little bit of a play, it works. And I'm going to do the same thing with here. For now, tonight I'll just put a Magiscope with a long rod in here, and then tomorrow what I'll do is I'll have it bent, or I'll bend it tonight, whatever, and then I'll put the Magiscope in there and just kind of let it sit. I'll just let it sit like this, and then what I could do is by the next day I can actually bend all these pieces and I can get it to where I want it. So I'm going to chisel this out a little bit so it's going to just look missing, but it doesn't really matter about all this muscle and stuff. This is all going to get covered up with that heavy sweater and wrinkles. So this is all going to be kind of hidden. You're not even going to see the tightness of the bicep. So I'm not really worried about any of this detail because we're going to have it cut here as well as here, and we're going to make this magnetized so it could go in and be able to paint. So the idea is I'm going to bend this arm and get it to where I want it. I mean, if you really wanted to go crazy, you can have the arm forward like this. You can have the arm behind her, like, you know, like she's got the magnifying glass behind her. You could kind of come down a little bit more. You could kind of come forward. So I think my goal is I want it like right about here like this. Like she's kind of like telling people to shush, but she's still, you know, it's kind of in natural position. But it's just easier to have the rod in there, bend it exactly where I want it. And then, but the idea is I can't have this completely at her hip. It's got to be just a little bit up higher, because when I build the skirt, basically what I want to do is I want to have this arm removable so I can actually paint, but I can build the skirt though, and I can actually put this arm with this magnified, you know, glass into a magnet, and I could build this skirt like the skirt is kind of blowing up and she's kind of putting her hand down almost to kind of take the skirt back down in a way, you know. So I have the idea there, it's just a little bit tricky. So what I'm going to do right now is going to mix up some Magiscope. I'm going to get this grinded out where I need to get grinded out. We'll put in the rods. I'll show you how I do that. We'll let it sit, and then hopefully by the next day I can get this rod situated, you know, and then we can start bending it to where we need it. Now if you really want to go crazy and you want to, like say you want her arm extended outwards, then you could do the same thing here. You can chop this arm here, you could put a rod in there as well, and then you can bend all the pieces to go where you want, and then you seam it up. Just think of it like a regular armature if you're building from scratch. So I'm going to go in the garage, chop this up, going to chop this up, and we'll get those rods in there, and then hopefully in probably like a day or two as this kind of cures up, we can position it where we need to. So what I did is took a brass rod and I sort of bent the edges on top, because I learned from past experience, if you just put a straight rod in there like this and like that, if you go to twist it, all of a sudden you sort of loosen it up, and then basically it slides right out. So if you have something in there, whether it's like a crimped edge or something like that, when you turn it, it's still going to, you run the risk if it's being this thin to bend it. But as long as there's enough there to kind of like twist and turn it, just to give you a little bit of a give, and then you go back in there with Aves later or Magiscope and you fill it in, you get it to where you want it. Now for the arm up here, of course, I need a little bit thicker. So what I did is I bent the bar and I gave it a little bit of a loop. So this way when it goes in there and I twist this, it's not going to come straight out. This kind of helps grab it. And the same thing when I put the arm in here, this little loop over here will help grab it. So it's just something a little bit extra. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to have the arm situated like this on the table. And I'm just going to put some Magiscope in it and let it cure up for the night. And then tomorrow we can try to get this one in there. And then after that we can start bending it to where we need it. So I got the arm position where I want it to be. It took me a few tries. What I did was I positioned it in the way I wanted it, and then I kind of like took a step back. I went across the room. I looked at it. I didn't like it. We were getting too close to putting her arm back on her hip, which I really didn't want to do. But I still need room over here for putting the sweater and skirt, so I got to have some kind of like give under there the way this is going to work out. So I kind of actually, it was funny, I kind of actually did some stand poses myself, you know, just kind of like this pose, just to see how the arm would go, the hand would go, sort of the position, and this is kind of what I came up with. So what I did is, once I pretty much got it to where I wanted, I hit some glue, I squeezed a hell of a lot of glue up in there, and then I used my Insta-Set, and I pretty much just kind of filled in that area, and I did the same thing over here with the wrist. All I really need to do now is I got some Magiscope. I'm going to just kind of fill this in real quick, and I'm going to also fill in a little bit of the wrist. The wrist is going to be all rework because I'm putting the Magiscope in now, here and here to lock this in place. Then tomorrow I can kind of shape this up, and I'll be able to sand this piece off here, and we'll create another magnet system. And then once this piece is off, I can actually fill this in and do this correctly than trying to do it here. Because right now if I try to sand this, saw this off, I'll just crack this glue and everything and it'll be a mess. I really need to secure it. So basically it's just a matter of taking a bunch of Magiscope right now and just doing this all the way around it. But like I said, you know, this arm kind of comes out too far over here. So what's going to happen is I'll fill in here a little bit, not much, and then I'll just kind of grind this down a little bit to get this to go back where that shoulder should be. But like I said, it doesn't really matter if it's super pretty or not. And then, you know, all I need to do is kind of get a lot of this Magiscope in on the side like that underneath there to really help lock this in place. I might, you know, if this doesn't really, if I feel that that rod in there is not working, this sort of kind of turns, I can always just Dremel another hole through here to there, and I can put a second rod in there and really lock it in place. But right now, it's just a matter of getting a bunch of this Magiscope in here and get this locked. So I'm going to get that done off camera, put her aside for the night, and then hopefully tomorrow we can saw off this piece, get this all magnetized up with a key, kind of clean up some things here and there, and we'll be in good shape. It's the next day, and what I had to do is I had a chance to saw off the arm. What I did is I Dremeled in the hole and I put in a metal rod, just like I did with this rod over here and everything. So we're going to create the same magnet system on this arm. Basically this was all really nasty and messed up, so what I did is I just grinded it all down. I got some Aves here, so I'm just going to kind of rebuild this area. It does need to be super pretty. I'll kind of sand it down, like, you know, where it looks like this, but it doesn't really need to be crazy because I'm going to put on a lot of Aves and I'm going to create that sweater on it, so it doesn't really matter. And I think what I might do is if I mix up a little more Aves, I might build out the chest a little bit more, make that bigger, so this way I can sort of have this all pretty much set up, clean it up, whatever I need to do, and then this way after we get the skirt done, this will be ready to go, because I don't want to try to mess around with this too much if I have that skirt done and I accidentally break it. So I think I really need to focus a little bit more up here, so I definitely am going to make the chest a little bit bigger. So let me get this arm situated, and then we'll work out the chest, and hopefully maybe in the next day or two I could kind of get this magnet system done and we should be pretty much set up. Alright, so I did a little bit off camera too. As you can see, I built out the chest a little bit. It's not like what it's going to exactly look like, because what's going to happen is there's going to be wrinkles in there. And in the past, whenever I try to sculpt wrinkles with being such a deep crevice in a, you know, gap between like few pieces of resin, it never really works out too well. I usually kind of have an issue. So I figured what I do is I get my basic shape going, so this way when I lay over that really thick layer of A's, I can actually do the wrinkles, and I can do wrinkles underneath, because I'm looking at some artwork on my screen of how I want it to look. Basically up top, you don't really, you kind of see a little bit of a curve going down, you know, with the chest, but most of the time with a lot of these sweaters, it's actually just straight across. So that's kind of what I want to create and stuff in there. So having that deep crevice in there with soft A's trying to kind of work in there creates a little bit of an issue. So you can kind of see I just gave myself a nice basic shape. So this way when I put a nice thick layer of A's over on top of it, it kind of just goes uniformed with that shape. What I did do is I did an experiment too. What I did is I kind of flattened out this A's and I layered it over just to see how it would look trying to do it. And I was running into that issue with all those, you know, deep areas, and there was just causing too much of an issue. So right now I got my basic shape. You can kind of see I worked out this area here a little bit. I'm kind of filling in some of the areas too because of the corset, because you know her you know, Black Canary's outfit actually pushes her chest up. And of course, you know, with Velma, it's kind of down a little bit more. So when I do the A's down there, I'll do a little bit of a thicker area here, so we kind of fill in the bottom a little bit more. Over in here, I'm not really messing around with too much right now, because this is going to be very wrinkly, because you got the arm pressing against the chest. So you got to create a lot of wrinkles and stuff around there. So there's still a lot more to go, but I got this basic shape. So hopefully tomorrow we can get this hopefully set up with the magnet and stuff, and then I think we're pretty much there for this section. Okay, so this is where we're going to close out the video. I'm really happy with where it's going. I can see Velma already. I pretty much envision what she's going to look like with the skirt and sweater. You know, thickening up these legs, adding this shoes and socks, and giving her the magnifying glass and the glasses. It's pretty much there. It just needs to be, you know, we got to get all those other details onto her. Now, I was very concerned in the beginning of this whole project because I was worried about getting glasses that are going to work, and also a magnifying glass in hand, because, like I said, I didn't really want to just do a basic Velma off of this with her hand on her hip. It would have been hard with the skirt, and plus, you know, it's kind of like, let's have a little bit more fun with it. So the arm may look a little strange right now, but you know, once we get that skirt on there and we get that heavy sweater and we get all these wrinkles, this should all come together pretty well. So I pretty much see where it's going to go, but right now it looks a little strange, but that's okay. Not an issue. Now, I have to think about this before we get into start sculpting the skirt. If you guys ever see that TV show Archer, I absolutely love that cartoon. And you know Lana from it, she's got that heavy, like, you know, turtleneck that sort of kind of comes down a little bit. It doesn't actually completely tighten around her neck. So I was thinking of maybe doing that with her neck. And I have to do that before I actually start doing the skirt. So in the next video, before we start the skirt, we're going to grab some silly putty, and I'm going to do some tests around here just to see what it looks like. If I feel that I want to have this collar sort of kind of come down a little bit more than just be completely tight around her neck, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to do some little bit of sculpting, some chopping, and make the neck come down a little bit more. So when you put the head in there, maybe it's at like a point, like that. So this way you see some of this neck, but it still goes into the collar. So I would think that the collar would sort of come down around this way, because she's kind of turning this way. So we're going to go over that in the next video. So let's get in a little bit closer. We'll kind of show you how everything is looking. I'm really enjoying this one a lot. It's really looking good. So it looks messy though. You might say, oh man, it's really hard to see all this stuff with all like the different A's and stuff showing around. But all in all, it's coming together pretty well. One of the next things too though is once we plan out that neck and we plan out that collar, I'm probably going to have to really wrap up these legs fairly well. Maybe put some, you know, wrap around that, and then some saran wrap, so this way when I handle these I don't get these all caked up when I'm working on the skirt. So I'm not really going to go too much into the skirt now. We'll kind of plan that out next video. So next video we're going to figure out the neck. We're going to start the skirt. I know the skirt, like some of them are pleated and some of them are not pleated, so we're going to try to figure out what I want to do with the skirt. I might do like a fake pleated look where kind of like fudge it. We'll kind of go over that. And then if all goes well after the skirt, maybe what we'll do is we'll work on her wristbands, which is going to be tight wristbands. There's going to be a tight part for here for her sweater that will go over the skirt, and then we'll figure out if this works out well there, and then maybe the video after that we really focus on the sweater, but we'll see how things go. I got to kind of mull this over my head for a week before I get back onto it. So let me know what you guys think. Hopefully you're enjoying the series so far, and if you are paying attention to the series, I am doing a live series of Daphne off of a Batgirl Sideshow statue. So this statue for Velma is a YouTube series only because it's something I want to do, but the Daphne statue that I'll be working on live stream, that is pretty much just something where people come into the chat, we talk about it, maybe we could brainstorm on some looks and stylize it a little bit more and see how that turns out after the live stream. And then when they're both done, we'll see what both companion pieces look side by side. Maybe it'll be a pretty cool little setup. So thanks for watching, and look forward to part 3 coming soon.